The porch swing creaked slowly as dawn peeled the dark sky open. Mist rolled off the lake in sheets, shrouding the still water like smoke from a dying fire. Melissa sat on the swing in a long robe, hair tied back, one hand wrapped around a steaming mug. She hadn't said a word since the sun broke. She never did before coffee. I stood barefoot on the porch steps, trying to remember how to breathe without a calendar alert reminding me. It was our third morning in Oak Valley, supposed to be the beginning of peace, a clean slate, a reset button after burning myself out in the tech rat race. Melissa had said yes to the move without hesitation. She hadn't asked how much we'd lose by walking away. That's the kind of woman she was: calm, precise, loyal in a way that didn't ask for applause. A woman who held the weight of the world in her spine and never flinched, which made the knock on the door that much more jarring. Bang, bang, bang. No doorbell, no polite tap, just 3 flat strikes, the kind you feel in your bones before you even hear them. Melissa's hand paused halfway to her mug. I turned to look at her. She was staring at the door with an expression that made the hairs on my arms lift. Curious, not surprised. She rose before I could move. I reached for her instinctively. "I'll get it." She brushed my arm. "No, let me." That tone. Steady. Final. I stepped aside. When she opened the door, morning light spilled in like stage lighting, revealing a woman who looked like she'd been genetically engineered in a lab where they only played HOA bylaws on loop. Crisp pantsuit. Digged bun. Pursed lips like she'd bitten a lemon and didn't want to admit it. "I'm Karen," the woman said with a voice sharp enough to file glass. She didn't wait for a reply. Homeowners Association president. "This is a routine security check for all new residents." Behind her stood a mountain of a man with a clipboard and a stare like a parking ticket. Unfeeling, immovable, always slightly damp. "Identification," Karen snapped. "Both of you." I opened my mouth, something furious on the tip of my tongue, but Melissa didn't even blink. She stepped forward, her robe whispering across the floorboards. "No silence." "No," Karen echoed, as if she'd misheard a dog speaking Latin. "You must not understand. This is a mandatory verification. Refusal constitutes a violation. You're trespassing," Melissa interrupted, soft and even. "We're not required to show ID to strangers on our porch at dawn. Please leave." Karen's eye twitched. She turned to her clipboard husband. "Call it in," she hissed. Level 3 escalation. Possible threat. Melissa didn't flinch. I did. "You'll regret this," Karen sneered. "I already do," Melissa murmured, sipping her coffee as she shut the door. I watched her walk back to the swing, sat beside her, unsure whether to laugh or board up the windows. "What the hell was that?" I whispered. Melissa watched the lake. "She thinks this is her kingdom. Let her play queen." 10 minutes later, 3 black SUVs tore through Oak Valley like wolves into a sheep farm. They weren't HOA. They weren't local cops. And they weren't here by accident. Melissa stood when she heard the tires. Not scared. Not surprised. She stepped off the porch like she'd been waiting for this day. I reached for her. "Melissa." She handed me her mug without looking back. "Stay inside. Whatever happens next, just watch." I did. Because when a dozen men in black tactical gear took aim at my wife, she didn't duck. She didn't run. She raised her hand, and the team leader saluted. The SWAT team moved like a hive mind, precise, wordless, deliberate. Within seconds, they fanned out around our property, their bodies forming a human perimeter. No red and blue flashes. No sirens. Just black armor, matte rifles, and boots on gravel. I stood inside, gripping the doorknob like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. Through the window, I could see the team leader, a tall, broad-shouldered man, approaching the porch with his rifle still half raised. Melissa stood in the middle of the lawn, barefoot, in a silk robe, steam still rising from her abandoned coffee mug. "On your knees. Hands visible," the team leader shouted. Melissa didn't move. Instead, her voice rang out with the clarity of a church bell. "Captain Miller, stand down." The command sliced through the morning like a blade. The man froze, rifle still aimed, helmet tilting ever so slightly. "Ma'am," he said, voice cracking. She took one step forward. "Level 7 clearance. Protocol Omega. Authenticate and reset perimeter." For a moment, I thought time itself had hiccuped. Captain Miller went pale, then straightened. His rifle dropped to his side. In an instant, the rest of the team followed suit, pivoting outward, away from Melissa, as if she was now the asset they were protecting, not the threat. He approached her with the kind of rigid reverence I'd only seen during ceremonial military funerals. "Apologies, ma'am." The call came from local dispatch. Hostage scenario. Infant cries. Possible automatic weapons fire. Melissa didn't blink. All false. Likely from a neighbor trying to weaponize the system. Captain Miller gave a tight nod. "Wouldn't be the first. You want an investigation launched?" "Not yet," she replied. "We're new here. Let them dig their own graves first." The captain glanced back at his men. "Understood." Then he gave a crisp salute and barked new orders. "Perimeter clear. Wheels up in 5. As quickly as they came, the black-clad soldiers melted back into their vehicles. The entire operation took 7 minutes. When they pulled away, only tire tracks remained, and a stunned silence. I opened the door and stepped out, still not believing what I'd seen. "Mel, when God's name was that?" She picked up her coffee and took a sip. Lukewarm now, but she didn't seem to mind. "You told me you worked in security consulting." "I did," she said. "That was a military-grade special forces unit. They stood down because you said 2 words. 3, technically. Isterteher. Melissa." She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw it. A flicker of something ancient behind her eyes. Weariness, calculation, danger. Not like a spy in a movie. Real. Heavy. "I retired," she said. "I didn't quit." The silence stretched between us like a loaded wire. Then she sighed, as if letting go of a weight. "After everything you went through, Alex, after what tech did to your soul, I wanted peace for you. You earned it. And I thought maybe if I laid it all down, I could earn it too." I sat beside her on the swing. And now, her gaze drifted across the street. Karen and her bulldog husband, Richard, were standing in their driveway, mouths slack, faces white. Karen's phone dangled from her hand like a failed magic wand. "She's not going to stop," Melissa said. That was her opening move. She expected to humiliate us. Instead, she just triggered a federal salute she doesn't understand. "She'll double down. She'll escalate," Melissa corrected. "People like her don't know how to stop. And I doubt she's acting alone." Across the lake, a bird took flight. The water rippled outward in concentric circles. "Calm above. Depths below. Whatever's coming next," I said, "we face it together." Melissa didn't smile. She just reached for my hand. "You better start writing again," she said. "Now. You'll want a record. Before this story gets rewritten." I looked across the street again. Karen had disappeared, but her curtains twitched like angry eyelids. The game had changed. But the real game? It hadn't even started. The letter came in a thick, cream-colored envelope. Embossed seal, gold-trimmed edges, the kind of paper you'd expect for a wedding invitation, not a war declaration. Melissa flipped it over twice, then opened it with a steak knife. Her face didn't change as she read. Mine did. 3 violations. 1. Our trash cans had remained visible for precisely 27 minutes past curfew. 2. A non-compliant flora specimen, a single dandelion, had been spotted near our driveway. 3. Our welcome mat, a gray-woven design that simply read, "Peace lives here," did not match the approved HOA earth tone palette. Total fines $250. It was absurd, and it was deliberate. Is she serious? I hissed, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. She called in a SWAT team, and now she's finding us over a weed? This is psychological warfare with stationery. Melissa laid the letter flat, then pressed it with her palm like she was flattening a map. It's not about weeds or welcome mats, she murmured. It's pattern escalation. She's trying to paper a case against us. Build a trail. Make it look like we're serial violators. For what? Eviction. Melissa's eyes flicked to mine. Or worse, forced sale. I stopped pacing. Wait, you think she's trying to push us out? I think she's part of something bigger. She opened her tablet and began typing. This kind of coordinated harassment, it smells like acquisition strategy. Acquisition? I blinked. Melissa, this is an HOA, not a hedge fund. She didn't answer. Her fingers flew across the keys, pulling up zoning maps, real estate sales, land deeds. All around Oak Valley, homes had changed hands in the past 6 months. A lot of them. Quiet sales. Below market. No signs in the yards. This neighborhood's being hollowed out, she said. And I don't think Karen's smart enough to mastermind it. Which means someone's behind her. Someone with money. My heart was still catching up. But why? Melissa turned the screen toward me. On it was a development proposal. Gleaming high-rises, lakeside resorts, a corporate logo I didn't recognize but instantly distrusted. They're trying to gentrify the lake, she said. But first, they need to collapse property values. Drive out owners. Rewrite zoning. And we're in the way. We're not just in the way. Her eyes were cold now. We're the example. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. This time, it wasn't a knock. It was a digital chime. Polite. Measured. Disarming. Melissa checked the front camera on her tablet. Then stiffened. She tapped the screen to zoom. Standing on our porch were 2 men in matching suits. Not black like the SWAT gear. Blue-gray. Tailored. Not government. Corporate. One held a leather portfolio. The other carried nothing, but wore a ring that glittered like a dagger in the morning light. Melissa opened the door halfway, just enough for her face to be seen. Good morning, the ring wearer said, smiling like a man who'd never heard no spoken aloud. You must be Mrs. Martin. I'm here on behalf of Marlowe Acquisition Group. My employer would like to extend an offer on your property. We're not selling, Melissa said before he could finish. The man didn't flinch. We assumed as much. Still, Mr. Thorne wanted to be thorough. He's very interested in this location. That name. I felt it in my gut before my brain caught up. Marcus Thorne, a name from business circles. Notorious. Quiet. Dangerous. I suggest you leave, Melissa said. He took a step forward. You should understand what's at stake. Oak Valley is changing. Whether you're part of that change or not is up to you. Melissa didn't blink. You have 10 seconds. The man smiled wider, but it never reached his eyes. Tell your husband the clock's ticking. They left without another word. Melissa closed the door and leaned against it for a second, silent. What now? I asked, my voice thinner than I liked. She looked up, steel in her eyes. They're not just after our house. They're after control. And if they think we'll break because of weeds and letters, she stopped. Walked over to the rug, bent down, pulled up a corner of the welcome mat. Beneath, it was a tiny microphone, new, disguised as a pebble. She held it up between her fingers. Then, they've underestimated who they're dealing with. I couldn't sleep anymore. Not because of nightmares, but because Melissa no longer did either. She was always awake, working in the office we designed for my failed writing dreams. Lights on at 2 a.m., blue glow bouncing off the blinds. Whispered calls and acronyms and coded names. Favors called. Protocols triggered. Whatever peace we had come for, it was gone now. Karen had started it with fines and violations. Richard had scaled it up through council back channels. But Marcus Thorne had cracked the sky open and invited a storm we weren't sure we could contain. Our property had become a fortress, a surveillance hub. Discreet cameras tracked every sidewalk whisper. Acoustic sensors mapped movement around our lawn. A federal-grade firewall protected our home network. A friend of Melissa's, codename Harlan, flew in under the radar just to sweep our home for bugs again. He found 5 more. Karen wasn't subtle anymore. Neither was Richard. They had become brazen. One morning, our mailbox was ripped off the post and left in pieces like a warning. Days later, a basketball-sized drone hovered outside our bedroom window until Melissa disabled it with a radio frequency disruptor disguised as a vintage radio. Every petty maneuver was a thread in a bigger web. Every step they took was designed to make us look like the paranoid aggressors. They were trying to make us snap. They almost did. I stood at the window one night, gripping a baseball that I hadn't used since college. My knuckles were white. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every creak of wood felt like a countdown. I don't know how much longer I can do this, I said out loud. Melissa was behind me, wrapping a bandage around her knuckle from earlier. She hadn't said how it got cut. I didn't ask. You won't have to, she said. Mel, they're everywhere. City inspectors, anonymous complaints, legal notices. Every week, another accusation, another fine. I can't even breathe in this house anymore. That's the point, she replied. I want to fight. I need to, but I'm not like you. I don't have the training. I don't have the history. You've got a past that can fight this war. I've only ever built apps and business pitches. What do I have? She looked at me with those impossible, storm-weathered eyes. The same eyes that didn't flinch when a SWAT captain saluted her. The same eyes that watched a drone crash into the lake without blinking. You have me, she said. And you have the one thing Thorne never expected, conviction. She pulled a folder from her desk and handed it to me. Here's where we hit back. Inside, shell corporations, false LLCs, land transfers buried in dummy trusts. All of it traced to Thorne's network. Melissa had mapped it like a battlefield. She knew which ones funneled permits, which laundered bribes, and, more importantly, who signed the deals. Richard Sterling's name was on 3 of them. Clear as day. This is gold, I whispered. It's ammunition, she corrected. But it's not enough. Not yet. We need to go public. Loud. Unavoidable. On their turf. I looked up. The HOA meeting? She nodded. That's suicide. It's opportunity. They've scheduled a vote to formally expel us. Karen thinks she's rallying the community. But if we flip that script, right there, in the open, we don't just survive. We torch their entire narrative. I stared down at the folder again. We have one shot, I said. One, she echoed. And if it fails? She set down her tablet, walked to me, and pressed her forehead gently against mine. Then we go dark. Disappear. Vanish from the grid. I have contingencies. I always have. My throat tightened. That's what you were before, wasn't it? She smiled faintly. Let's just say I was good at making people disappear. I closed my eyes. Not because I was afraid of losing the house. Not because I feared Thorne. But because I knew now, without a shadow of doubt, that the woman I loved had once lived a life so far beyond mine, it made everything I thought I knew feel like kindergarten. And she had walked away from it. For me. If she was willing to step back into hell for us, then I'd burn beside her. All right, I whispered. Let's flip the script. The Oak Valley Community Center hadn't been this packed since the 4th of July chili cook-off. But tonight, the room crackled with a different kind of heat. Fear, division, suspicion. Folding chairs scraped on the floor. Neighbors sat in tight rows, eyes flicking toward us, then away again like we were radioactive. Karen perched at the center of the long HOA table, wearing a smug coral blazer and a faux diplomatic smile that curled like a snake's tail. Richard sat beside her in a pressed navy suit, fingers drumming on the table with practiced ease. The agenda taped to the podium said it plainly. Motion to expel residents of 112 Lakeside Drive for persistent noncompliance and community disruption. Melissa leaned in close to me. Her voice was low. He's here. I followed her gaze. In the back, flanked by 2 dead-eyed men in golf polos stretched too tight over chest rigs, stood Marcus Thorne. The developer, the predator, the puppeteer. He didn't sit. He didn't need to. He just folded his arms and smiled like he was already sipping champagne. Karen tapped the mic. Feedback squealed, then died. Order. We'll begin. She launched into a speech soaked in bureaucratic theater. Veiled accusations. Half-truths polished into daggers. She described Melissa and me as disruptive, disrespectful, unwilling to integrate into the community values of Oak Valley. Her voice dripped with performative sorrow, the martyrdom of a tyrant gaslighting an entire village. She doesn't want peace, Karen declared. She wants to own your silence. And if we allow that, we're not neighbors, we're hostages. Gasps. A few claps. I felt my stomach tighten. Melissa sat still, head bowed. I knew that posture. It wasn't defeat. It was alignment. Before we vote, Karen said, eyes flicking to us, do the accused have anything to say for themselves? Melissa stood. No, she said, but I have something to show. She turned to the back wall, where the old community projector had been set up earlier for slideshow announcements. She clicked a button on her tablet. The room dimmed. The screen behind Karen lit up with a simple white title, The Thorne Conspiracy, How Oak Valley Was Sold Without Consent. A murmur rippled through the room. Slides began, a web of shell companies with Thorne's name buried beneath them, property deeds showing sudden acquisitions of nearby homes, permit requests signed by Richard, Karen's signature on falsified violation notices, a detailed map showing Oak Valley's future, replaced by luxury condos and a corporate marina. Gasps turned to outrage. People rose from their seats. Someone shouted, "Is this real?" Thorne stepped forward. "This is absurd." Melissa cut him off. "It's all verified. You've been bleeding this neighborhood dry, one violation at a time. Weaponizing bureaucracy. Driving families out so your company could buy their homes at half price." Karen stammered, This is doctored. You're not even supposed to be here." "Oh, we're very much supposed to be here," I said, stepping to the front. "And so is he." I pointed to Thorne. "Funny thing about corruption, when you leave receipts, they tend to stack up." Thorne snarled and gestured to his goons. They moved. Melissa moved faster. The room gasped as she stepped into the aisle and dropped the first man with a single-joint lock that folded him like paper. The second froze. Melissa pointed 2 fingers at his chest. "Don't." He didn't. Karen was shrieking now, red-faced, lunging for the projector. "Turn it off. Turn it off." A hand caught her wrist. A familiar voice spoke. "Karen Whitmore, Richard Sterling, Marcus Thorne, you're under arrest." Captain Miller, now in a dark blue state badge and plain clothes, stepped forward. Behind him, officers poured in from every exit, sealing the room. The moment crystallized. Karen frozen mid-lunge. Richard slack-jawed. Thorne pale and suddenly, finally, small. Flashing lights lit up the windows. Handcuffs clicked like punctuation marks, one after the other. Melissa stood by the projector. Calm, whole, unblinking. I looked out at the crowd, and for the first time since we moved to Oak Valley, no one looked away. They were watching the truth unfold, and they were listening. 6 months later, the lake is quiet again. Not just surface still, but soul quiet. The kind that settles into your bones after a storm passes and doesn't come back. The water glimmers in the afternoon light, and the birds have finally returned to our porch railing, chirping like nothing ever happened. They don't know the neighborhood they sing above was nearly sold out from under them. Or maybe they do. Birds notice things people miss. Melissa sits beside me on the swing with a blueberry muffin resting on a napkin between us. She made it herself. That's become her ritual now, baking something soft and sweet after years of sharpening edges no one was supposed to see. I've started writing again. For real this time. Not apps or quarterly briefs. Just words. Stories. This one mostly. The Oak Valley reboot, as the neighbors call it, is well underway. Karen is in prison, convicted of mail fraud, falsifying public documents, and felony B&E. Her insanity defense collapsed under the weight of 22 residents who testified against her, some of them in tears. Richard was handed a 40-year sentence for racketeering and conspiracy. The plea deal would have been lighter, but Melissa had carefully documented his entire side hustle laundering permits through City Hall. And Marcus Thorne? He disappeared into the system like toxic waste in a seal barrel. The state charged him, the feds indicted him, and last I heard, the SEC and IRS are arguing over which agency gets to pick the bones first. Oak Valley survived, but not unchanged. The HOA was dissolved and rebuilt from scratch. A new charter, new leadership. Vinny, the once jittery lawn gnome whisperer, is now treasurer. He runs the community fund like a dragon with anxiety. The man who once feared shadows now stands tall at meetings and jokes about regulation gnome height. People laugh, because laughter came back. The new HOA isn't a tool for control anymore. It's a safety net, a neighborhood built on trust instead of fear. We planted a new community garden behind the clubhouse. People bring seeds, snacks, stories. Sometimes, people even bring apologies. Neighbors who once crossed the street to avoid us now wave from their driveways. Some knock on the door with fresh bread or awkward conversations about courage. One by one, the spell Karen cast over the community has broken. But it wasn't magic. It was just fear. And when someone finally stands up to it, the whole illusion starts to crack. There are scars, of course. You don't walk through fire and come out unburned. I still check the locks twice at night. Melissa never quite lets her guard down. I've caught her scanning rooms with that quiet tactical calculation that lives in her blood. But sometimes, just sometimes, she lets the mission fade. She leans her head on my shoulder, barefoot and soft and fully present. And in those moments, I see the woman she became after the wars. The woman who traded satellites and safe houses for sunrise muffins and porch swings. I asked her once, after the dust settled, what level 7 really meant. She smiled. It means they only come if they know you're worth saving. We didn't move here to fight. We came for peace. That part was true. But peace, I've learned, is not something given freely. It's something earned, defended, sometimes even taken back, 1 inch at a time. And Melissa? She took it back for both of us. The funny thing is, I used to think I was the protector, the one who'd earned a fortress after grinding myself to exhaustion for a company I no longer loved. But it wasn't me building fortresses. It was her. Every quiet step, every unseen plan, every phone call that started with a code name and ended with safety. She didn't protect me from the world. She protected me within it. And she never asked for thanks. The sun is dipping behind the tree line now, casting gold across the water. I take a bite of the muffin. Still warm. Perfect. Melissa sips her tea. She's not watching the lake. She's watching the road. Expecting company? I ask. She shrugs. Old habits. Then she adds, after a long pause, but if anyone does come, I don't mind reminding them. Of what? She turns, the breeze catching a loose strand of hair. Her eyes are calm, unshaken. That's some welcome Matt's bite. We sit in silence after that. Not the awkward kind, the earned kind. The kind that only comes after the long arc of resistance bends finally, toward peace. And stays there.